Okay, so you've probably seen this term popping up everywhere online, right? Especially if you're in any kind of religious or, well, ex-religious circles. Faith deconstruction. But what does that even mean? What does it look like to take your faith apart piece by piece? Today on The Explainer, we're going to dive into that really personal and often very, very public journey of questioning belief. So let's start with this. A total bombshell from August 2019. This came from Marty Samson, a guy who wrote some of the most famous worship songs sung in churches all over the world. His very public crisis of faith, well, it's our doorway into this whole complicated conversation.
All right, so what are we really talking about when we use this term deconstruction? Let's actually define it.
At its heart, faith deconstruction is a process of analysis. You know, the term really bubbled up inside American evangelicalism, and it describes a journey taking your entire belief system, everything you grew up with, and putting it under a microscope to scrutinize every single piece. It's a really intense, personal re-examination.
And this is a really crucial point. This isn't just passive doubt or kind of drifting away from church. No, deconstruction is an active and often pretty painful process of dissecting what you believe and why you believe it. And for the people going through it, man, it can unleash this whole spectrum of feelings, from deep anxiety all the way to this incredible sense of freedom. And to give you an idea of just how big this conversation is, check this out. We are not talking about some fringe movement happening in the shadows. Almost 300,000 posts with this one hashtag on Instagram alone tells you that this is a massive and very, very public thing.
So to really get what this process can look like in the real world, let's circle back to the man behind that opening quote, Marty Samson.
I mean, this guy was a giant in the world of modern worship music. Starting back in the late 90s, he helped write the actual soundtrack for a whole generation of evangelicals. Millions of people sing his songs. So when he, of all people, starts to publicly question everything, you can bet the community he helped build was absolutely shaken. So his Instagram post, which he later deleted, wasn't just a simple statement. It was a list of questions. And these questions, they get right to the heart of the things that often trigger deconstruction for so many people. The tough theological questions, the problem of suffering, the way believers sometimes act. And this is where all that questioning eventually took him. For somebody who built their life and career on the uniqueness of Christianity, this statement shows just how deep that shift was. The belief system he'd spent his life promoting no longer felt special or, exclusively true to him.
Of course, when a figure that public voices these kinds of doubts so openly, it's going to start a fire. It sparked a huge debate. Is deconstruction a healthy thing, a re-examination, or is it a dangerous falling away? And the Christian community is really, really divided on this. So on one side, you have critics, like the musician John Cooper, who flat out calls deconstruction a false religion, or writers who say it's just about creating a god of his own design. To them, it's apostasy, simple as that. You're abandoning the faith. But then on the other side, you've got people like the journalist Tyler Huckabee, who see it as a really courageous act, something that can actually lead to a stronger, more authentic faith, even if it looks totally different than it did before.
And this whole debate also kicked off some pretty deep soul-searching. Thinkers like Daniel McCoy here are suggesting that maybe, just maybe, a faith that's built mostly on the emotional highs of worship culture, maybe it doesn't give people the deep roots they need to handle serious doubts. The argument is that it takes more than just powerful songs to build a lasting faith. It takes real discipleship, real theological answers. So, after all the dismantling, all the taking apart, what happens next? Once that old structure is in pieces on the floor, what, if anything, gets built in its place? To get a handle on where this journey can lead, let's look at the work of psychologist Daryl Van Tongeren. He studied this whole phenomenon and basically says it tends to end up in one of two places. So the first path is religious reconstruction. This is where a person takes the pieces and puts them back together, but maybe in a new way, building a faith that feels revised or maybe even stronger. The second path is religious de-identification. And that's pretty much what it sounds like. It's about stepping away, creating distance from that old religious identity, those beliefs, and that community.
Now, that whole stepping away thing, it's not usually just one clean break. Van Tongeren breaks it down into these 4 Ds that often overlap. It can look like disbelief, so rejecting the main ideas, or disengagement, where you lose that emotional, spiritual connection. It might be discontinuance of the rules, and finally, disaffiliation, which is leaving the community itself. For any one person, it could be just one of these, or it could be the whole shebang.
So ultimately, deconstruction forces this massive confrontation with the very foundation of what a person believes. And it leaves us with this huge, lingering question. Not just for the people going through it, but for anyone watching it happen. When a faith is completely taken apart, what essential pieces, if any, actually survive? And on what kind of foundation can something new ever be rebuilt?
Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever found yourself truly questioning deeply held beliefs, maybe even the foundational ones you grew up with?
It's a journey many are taking, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's become widely known as faith deconstruction.
exactly. And today we're embarking on a deep dive into this very topic.
That's right. We've got a really fascinating collection of sources here, articles, some research, excerpts from Wikipedia too. And they all center on faith deconstruction and its recent surge. It's been quite significant, particularly within American evangelicalism.
It really has.
And what's compelling about these sources is the sheer breadth of perspectives, from definitions and possible outcomes to some really sharp criticisms, and also just nuanced explanations of what this deeply personal process actually involves.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore what faith deconstruction truly means, how it actually manifests in individuals, and the varied, often quite strong responses it gets. We're going to use the journey of a prominent worship songwriter, Marty Samson. His story was very public as a kind of central example to bring these ideas to life.
Good idea.
Our goal is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge to help you understand this complex, sometimes turbulent, but profoundly personal process.
Let's do it.
So let's kick things off right at the beginning. What exactly is faith deconstruction?
Well, the sources explain it as a process where religious believers re-examine, question their long-held beliefs.
Okay.
It really found its footing initially within American evangelicalism. Sometimes it's even called evangelical deconstruction.
Right, I've heard that term.
But the term's use is broadened now, applied to other religions too. And it definitely rose in popular awareness, especially connected to the ex-evangelical movement, which really took off around 2016.
And what about the actual process? What does that feel like for people?
That's where it gets really interesting. People undergoing it often describe a mix of, destabilizing feelings. Anxiety, guilt, anger, confusion, fear. Those are very common.
Wow, sounds intense.
It can be. But on the flip side, they can also report experiencing curiosity, a sense of awe, even profound liberation.
So a real paradox of emotions then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not a straightforward path at all. It's genuinely open-ended, and the outcome is often highly uncertain.
And how do different people define it? Are there variations?
Yeah, there are. Elisa Childers, for instance, she calls it systematically dissecting and often rejecting the beliefs you grew up with. That's quite a strong definition. Tyler Huckabee offers something simpler, re-examining the faith you grew up with.
Okay, more neutral.
Right. And then John Stonestreet and Timothy Paget point out something interesting, that the term is used both descriptively, just explaining what it is.
Like we're doing now.
Exactly. And prescriptively. Sometimes it's even recommended as a courageous thing to do, as if it's something people should undertake.
So there's a value judgment attached sometimes.
Potentially, yes. And Alan Jameson, in his book A Churchless Faith, gives a really detailed description. He talks about examining individual components of faith, like taking each belief or value out, looking at it closely.
Scrutinizing it.
Yeah, scrutinizing it and then deciding whether to appropriate it as part of their own personal belief or value system. So a very deliberate sorting process.
That spectrum of emotions you mentioned, anxiety, fear, but also liberation. Where does that tension come from, do the sources suggest?
It seems to be both the dismantling and the potential rebuilding. The fear often comes from, undoing a really deeply ingrained identity, a worldview. That can feel like a huge loss, even a threat to your community.
Sure.
But the curiosity and liberation, that seems to stem from the potential for discovery, for shedding things that maybe didn't fit anymore, and the freedom to explore belief on your own terms. It's very raw.
And the term itself, deconstruction, it sounds quite academic.
It does, and it has this sort of loose relationship to Jacques Derrida's philosophical concept. But apparently, one figure, known online as Naked Pastor David Hayward, actually said he co-opted the term when his own beliefs started to change.
So he borrowed it.
Essentially, yeah. He took this complex academic idea and applied it to a personal spiritual journey.
And it's certainly caught on.
Oh, it's spread like wildfire. Its visibility has just skyrocketed, particularly online. You've got notable advocates like the internet comedy duo Rhett McLaughlin and Sweek Neal.
From Good Mythical Morning, yeah, I know them.
Right.
Yeah.
They did multiple podcast episodes detailing their own spiritual deconstruction. Very public. Then there's John D. Caputo, a postmodern theologian who wrote What Would Jesus Deconstruct? And Richard Rohr, the contemplative writer, he gets mentioned too.
And people who've gone through it very publicly.
Yes, prominent former Christians like Joshua Harris, author of I Kissed Dating Goodbye.
Oh yeah, that book was huge.
Huge, and later quite controversial. He even briefly offered a deconstruction course. And Abraham Piper is another name that comes up.
In the online presence, you mentioned that.
It's significant. As of early 2022, there were nearly 300,000 Instagram posts with hashtag deconstruction, and the Reddit community, our Deconstruction, had almost 10,000 members by March 2025. So this isn't some niche thing, it's a widespread conversation.
Definitely not niche. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Once people start down this path, where do they end up? What are the possible outcomes?
Psychologist Daryl Arvin Tongeren offers a really helpful framework here. He identifies two main paths, broadly speaking.
Okay.
First, there's religious reconstruction. This is where people actually retain or rebuild their beliefs.
So they don't necessarily leave.
Not necessarily. Often their identity shifts, and some even feel it leads to spiritual growth, a deeper maturity. It's about transforming faith, not always abandoning it.
Interesting. And the second path?
The second is religious de-identification. This involves a reduction in religious identity or beliefs.
Okay, a move away from it.
Right. But even within that, it's not just one thing. It can break down further. There's disbelief, maybe becoming atheist or agnostic.
Right.
There's disengagement, which is more about losing that emotional connection to the divine, like prayer feeling empty. Then discontinuance of religious rules, maybe reconsidering views on things like sexuality or drinking.
So changing behavior.
Exactly. And finally, disaffiliation from the community, simply stopping going to church or a religious event.
Wow. So it really is a spectrum from reconstruction all the way to disbelief and disaffiliation.
It truly is. And people can move between these points too. It's not always a fixed destination.
You can imagine how disorienting that must be for many people. Let's try and bring these abstract ideas to life now with that example we mentioned, Marty Samson.
Right, the songwriter.
Yes, his story really illustrates a lot of these dynamics. He's Australian, a singer-songwriter, formerly a worship leader at Hillsong Church, a very influential church globally.
Massive.
And he wrote or co-wrote loads of really well-known worship songs. By Your Side, God is Great, All I Need Is You, King of Majesty. Songs sung in churches everywhere.
Definitely. Very influential.
Yeah.
And he kicked off this huge public discussion with an Instagram post back in August 2019. It's deleted now, but it made waves.
What did it say?
It was incredibly raw. He said, I'm genuinely losing my faith and it doesn't bother me. Like, what bothers me now is nothing. I'm so happy now, so at peace with the world, it's crazy.
Wow, that's blunt.
Very. And then he listed his reasons. He kept saying, no one talks about it regarding things like preachers falling from grace, few miracles actually happening, the Bible having contradictions, how a loving God could send people to hell.
These are big questions.
Huge questions. And also the judgmental nature of some Christians. He said he wanted genuine truth, not just the I just believe it kind.
He wanted evidence. Or something more solid.
Seems like it. He added that science keeps piercing the truth of every religion, and that lots of things help people change their lives, not just one version of God. His conclusion was pretty stark. Christianity just seems to me like another religion at this point.
That's a major shift from leading worship at Hillsong.
Massive.
Yeah.
Though, it's important he did still affirm universal values. He said, love and forgive, absolutely. Be kind, absolutely. Be generous and do good to others, absolutely. Some things are good no matter what you believe.
So retaining a moral compass, just detaching it from that specific faith.
Exactly.
And the reaction, I imagine that post caused quite a stir.
Oh, absolutely. An immediate outpouring on social media. Lots of sadness, concern, debate.
Did he respond to that?
He did, quite quickly. He posted a follow-up clarification, said he hadn't actually renounced his faith, but admitted it was on incredibly shaky ground.
So pulling back slightly from the initial statement?
A bit, yeah. He explained he was actively studying both sides of the faith debate, looking at arguments from Christian apologists he named Lennox, Zacharias, Licona, but also considering atheist perspectives.
Trying to be balanced, it sounds like.
That was the stance he presented. He wrote, "If the truth is true, it will remain so, regardless of my understanding of it. Examining a diamond more closer reveals the quality. As I am still breathing, I am still learning."
That sounds like someone genuinely wrestling, doesn't it?
It does. But then, illustrating how fluid these things are, a later Wikipedia entry notes that by August 23rd, just weeks later, he no longer identified as a Christian.
So it evolved quickly.
Very quickly, it seems. And it's worth remembering, this was just weeks after Joshua Harris made a similar announcement, explicitly using the term deconstruction, which some people at the time framed simply as falling away. Shows the different language used.
Yeah, the labels matter. This brings us to a really crucial point. How do different people view deconstruction itself? Our sources show some stark contrasts, right?
They really do. On one side, you have what you might call the war perspective.
Yeah.
John Cooper, the frontman for the band Skillet.
Yeah, Christian rock band.
He declared very publicly, "It is time that we declare war against this deconstruction Christian movement. There is nothing Christian about it. It is a false religion."
Wow. Declaring war, that's strong.
Very strong. And similarly, Matt Chandler, a well-known pastor, clarified his view that deconstruction doesn't mean doubt or theological wrestle or struggling through church hurt, but actually means leaving the faith entirely.
So for them, it's synonymous with apostasy, essentially.
That seems to be the implication, yes. It's seen as inherently negative, a dangerous path away from true belief.
Okay, that's one clear perspective. What's the counter-argument? The more nuanced view.
Well, on the other hand, you have someone like Tyler Huckabee.
Yeah.
He argues that, yes, deconstruction can lead to deconversion, losing faith.
Sure.
But it can also result in your faith looking more or less the same.
Yeah.
Or he thinks most often it's somewhere in between, rethinking the things you've always believed and coming to a new, different understanding of parts of it.
The reconstruction idea again.
Exactly. He suggests this often aligns with what's called progressive Christianity. And he even makes the bold claim that Martin Luther's theological revolution back in the 16th century,
The Reformation.
yeah, the Reformation itself fits into the paradigm of what researchers would call deconstruction today.
That's provocative, framing Luther as a deconstructor.
It is. But then you also get critiques of the term itself. Carl Trueman, a theologian, he asserts that the, quote, misuse of the Derridian D word gives the whole a specious veneer of intellectualism and a certain superannuated postmodern chic.
Okay, translate that for us.
Basically, he's saying that using this fancy philosophical term, deconstruction, makes the whole process sound more intellectually sophisticated or trendy than maybe it is, perhaps trying to legitimize something he sees differently.
Got it. So a critique of the label suggesting it adds a false weight.
Pretty much.
Okay, so clearly a deep division in how this is all perceived. Let's transition now and look deeper at some of the specific points Marty Samson raised, using some theological responses that reflect these broader views.
Good idea. Brenton Collier wrote an article called Marty Samson and the Frailty of False Faith. His take is interesting. He interprets Samson's rejection not really as a problem with God or the Bible, but as Samson moving away from the God of the Bible for a God of his own design.
Okay, so shifting the focus onto Samson's understanding of God.
Exactly. Take Samson's point about falling preachers. Collier argues that leaders failing isn't an indictment on God's holiness, but rather on the sinfulness of man. He says it actually confirms our need for a savior.
So, human failure proves the need for divine grace.
That's his argument. He stresses that if your faith is in man, it will fail. It's about where you place your trust.
Okay. What about the lack of miracles point that Samson raised? That's a common one.
Collier addresses that quite personally. He shares a story about his own family experiencing a miscarriage after having had what they considered a miracle baby.
Oh, tough.
Yeah. And he suggests that while God does intervene sometimes, his ultimate purpose is the ultimate miracle of salvation. He quotes John 1, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us." That miracle, he says, is eternal, unlike temporary physical healing or financial help.
So focusing on the spiritual over the physical.
Right. And he stresses, God is not obligated to conform to your will. It's a challenge to the idea that faith guarantees certain worldly outcomes.
And the really tough questions. Hell, Bible contradictions.
Collier frames Samson's questions about those issues, like how God can send people to hell, as really asking, how can God do something I don't understand? Or even, how can God do something I disagree with?
Puts the onus back on human limitation.
It does. He warns that that kind of mindset puts your faith on a fault line because fundamentally we are not God. His ways are higher than our ways. His conclusion. If you put your faith in your personal version of God, your faith will fail.
So, Collier's view, representing one theological perspective, sees deconstruction often as a crisis of human understanding or maybe misplaced trust, rather than a fundamental flaw in the faith itself.
That seems to be the core of his argument, yes.
Okay, that's a critical theological lens. So, what does this all mean for someone maybe listening now who's navigating these kinds of doubts? Daniel McCoy wrote an article, Songwriter Marty Samson and the Unsustainability of Feelings-Based Faith. And he offers 3 key insights that really seem to pull some threads together.
Yeah, McCoy's piece is interesting. His first insight is basically that charisma doesn't equal foundation.
Okay, what does he mean by that?
He argues that emotionally powerful worship songs, like many of Samson's own songs, they can be really stirring in the moment, right? But they don't necessarily build an enduring faith.
So the feeling is temporary.
It can be. The takeaway is that relying only on those emotional highs in your faith might leave you vulnerable when doubts or difficulties hit, because feelings ebb and flow. A strong foundation needs more than just feeling.
That makes a lot of sense. Emotions are great, but maybe not the bedrock. What's his second insight?
Second, he says that worship without theology leaves gaps.
Gaps.
Yeah. McCoy suggests many modern worship songs, while inspiring, often lack the depth needed to anchor believers through life's doubts, temptations, and suffering.
So they don't give you the tools to think through the hard stuff.
Pretty much. He's saying songs can inspire, but they might not provide that robust theological framework you need to grapple with complex questions or real suffering. It's like building a beautiful house, but forgetting the structural supports.
Gotcha. So it's about needing both the heart and the head engaged. What's his final point?
His final point ties it together. Discipleship sustained what worship starts.
Okay.
He believes long-term faithfulness isn't just about moments of worship, but depends on deeper spiritual formation, biblical grounding, and walking through doubts not around them.
Actively engaging with the hard questions.
Exactly. And he directly challenges Samson's refrain. No one talks about it. McCoy asks, seriously, is it true that no one is talking about these things? Ever heard of theological study? Ever heard of apologetics?
Ooh, quite pointed.
It is. And then he makes this really provocative claim. Marty, it's not your faith that doesn't talk about these things, it's your songs that don't.
Wow. He's suggesting the style of worship might contribute to the problem.
That's the implication. McCoy suggests that maybe some modern worship paints only a partial picture of God, perhaps avoiding harder concepts like wrath or judgment, which leads to a fragile understanding. He even quotes the parable of the sower, the seed on rocky ground.
Since they have no root, they last only a short time.
Precisely. His advice, really for anyone listening, is that a partial version of God is easy to dismiss as fantasy. He concludes that following the real Jesus, the whole picture, takes you through the doubts, not around them, and on the other side, you'll find a better peace.
That really lands hard. The idea that a robust faith isn't about avoiding the tough questions, but having the resources, the roots, to confront them. And as Denny Burke adds, another voice in these sources, faith should ultimately be placed not in any Christian celebrity or leader, but in Jesus Christ. A reminder of the true object of faith.
A crucial reminder.
Burke also reminds us that apostasy is real, people do walk away, but believers remain dependent upon God's grace today as we were the first day we tasted it. It's an ongoing reliance.
Yeah, a continuous journey.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways for you listening? Well, first, faith deconstruction is clearly a deeply personal, often intense process of re-examining core beliefs.
Absolutely. And the outcomes, as we saw, span a really wide range from a renewed, perhaps reshaped faith, all the way to complete disaffiliation.
And it's crucial, isn't it, to understand the different ways people view this whole movement, from those who see it as a definitive break from faith,
to those who see it as a potentially courageous, even transformative journey towards a more authentic personal understanding. Very different takes.
And ultimately, the insights from thinkers like McCoy and Collier really stress the importance of building a faith with deep roots, a solid theological foundation, ongoing discipleship, something that goes beyond just emotional experiences to help sustain you through doubt and adversity, not just around it.
Which really leads to a final thought-provoking question, doesn't it? Given these diverse expressions of faith and just the basic human tendency to question and evolve, how might this concept of deconstruction itself continue to evolve, especially as it moves beyond its evangelical origins? And perhaps more importantly, what new forms of reconstruction or just new ways of understanding faith and doubt might emerge in the years to come?
That's definitely something to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.